Hey guys, it is the beginning of July, and I am actually filming my notable reads from June. Who is she? I don't know her. Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Alyssa. If you're new here, say hello, drop a comment. If you are not new, hello. It's good to see you back. Welcome back. So I am here to do my notable reads, like I said, for June. If you are new here, every month, instead of doing a full wrap up of all the books I read, because I do read quite a few books every month, and sometimes it can get quite lengthy, and then that deters me from actually filming the thing, we do notable reads, where I talk about six books from the previous month that were notable in some way. I usually have a couple honorable mentions that don't really make like the top of the list, but there's something about them that I want to mention so that it doesn't get lost. Like I want BookTube to hear about these like honorable mentions. So we're going to jump into those. At first we start with, since I am obsessed with Storygraph, I always call it Storygraph, and we added these in a couple months ago and I'm loving it. Let's go through some stats. So in the month of June I read 16 books, which is not, I usually read more than that, but we're not here. It's not about numbers. I like the numbers, but it's not a competition. So just read. God, I suck. I'm such a dork. That equaled exactly 6,362 pages read. I love the mood charts in particular over on Storygraph, and weirdly, this was a weird month for me. Normally, I'm very like dark and sad, but this month it was emotional, reflective, lighthearted, and then dark. So I must have needed some uplifting shit in the month of June. That's what I'm thinking, is I needed some emotional support in June. And seeing how June started and June ended, I think it makes sense. Pacing is about the same. I pretty much predominantly read really medium paced, whatever the heck that means, books. They're not super fast, they're not super slow. They are just right, I guess. Goldilocks of book pacing. Page numbers, again, I'm sort of like right in the middle. I like 300 to just under 500 page books. I'm at 69% this month. So I think in May I had more under 300 page books, but back to sort of my normal spread of page numbers. And then this is one of my favorite charts, is the genres that I read. So this is probably the shortest, most abbreviated list that I've ever had from Storygraph since I started doing this, because usually it's like this super long thing that I can't even like fit on a screenshot. But my top, I didn't read that many different sorts of genres. I was very in like one little area, but I read a lot of literary, contemporary, classics, romance, historical. Those are my top 5. And then all of my fantasy, science fiction, magical realism, like that's still there. I just didn't read anything else. So I think this one's a really interesting one this month. I think I went to my core of comfort reads in the month of June, because June was a struggle. So, and the graphs prove that. So I think that's really interesting. So let's go through these 6 books that I picked for my notable reads from June in no particular order. So this is the order that they are stacked up in front of me. Through them, I have 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, which I did talk about I think I talked about almost all of these in a reading vlog, but I really loved this. I think my favorite things about this romance are just how grown up it is. As an older lady, you know, I still like melodramatic, like crazy emotional, more like hormonally driven romance. But as an adult, there's this gravitational pull to like adults in romance, like adults actually behaving like adults. And like they are not like perfect adults. They have problems, they have flaws, but they do approach things in a more adult manner, which I like because I'm an adult. Like I have responsibilities and I can't just like go leave and do whatever I want. I can't just like, I don't know, get a job and become someone submissive. Like, that's just not how life works. Like, I'm in a different phase of life. So I really enjoyed this. I think it also hits on some really heavy hitting topics. I love the exploration of trauma and dependency and dealing with like PTSD and like not really having good parental role models and then trying to become a good parental role model. Like there's a lot in this romance that's not just like some good lovin'. And there was some good lovin'. There was some steaminess. It's not super steamy. It's like one or two chilies, but like, well, maybe like 2 or 3 chilies. But like it's not crazy. It's not over the top. It's not like just Pound Town all day long. But I loved it. And I get it. And there's a lot of dog-eared pages because I didn't have flags on me for the most of the time that I was reading this, so I flagged them down for pages that had things I wanted to remember on them. Highly recommend, if for some reason you're like me and you haven't read this yet, recommend going and reading it. It's also just a very good summer read. I think romances are always a really good summer read. This is a very good summer read. Next in the pile is Ruth Ozecki's The Book of Form and Emptiness. The first time I heard someone talk about this book, and I believe it was Eric Carl Anderson, I was like, I need that book. That book is going to be a favorite of mine. I love that book. And I hunted it down, and I hunted it down, and I hunted it down, and I finally thrifted it, and I read it. And I flipping love this book. This book is so good. She is a little chunky, but it's a wonderful book talking about grief and mental illness and like what is sanity. There's a lot of good discussion about like, so there's this book that I read a little while ago called I think his name is Ron Johnson or John Ronson, something like that. And he wrote this book called The Psychopath Test. I think that's what it's called. And he has this TED Talk that I can try to find and link below if I remember, where he talks about this as well. And one of the things he talks about is this guy who's in Broadmoor Prison, which is a psychiatric prison in the UK, and how the guy like allegedly, faked being crazy so that he can have an insanity defense, and instead of going to prison, this would be the lighter sentence. But the difference is that if he had just gone to prison for his crime, his violent crime, he would be out on parole. But instead, because he allegedly faked this insanity defense, he's now in Broadmoor for the perceivable future. And once you are marked as crazy or insane or, bipolar, schizophrenic, whatever, when somebody questions your connection with reality on a clinical level, it becomes incredibly difficult to prove that you are somewhat sane. So our main character here is this young boy, and he hears things. Like, he does have a mental illness, but he does also have real people in his life. And it gets to this point where the other people in his life who don't know these real people, because he's not bringing them into his other areas of life, start to think that these people over here are made up. And that becomes a big point in the plot, is that whether you can trust him as a narrator or as just a reporter of any facts, because is everything he's saying true? Does everything he hears true? Everything he says, sees, feels, is it true, or is it some part of some psychoses? So I really loved that whole exploration. And I also loved just the discussion of books as if they were sentient, as if books were in this give and take relationship with us, where they felt things, like they feel our emotions reading them, that they want to be read, that they could throw themselves off of a bookshelf to us in some way so that we get them at the time that we need them in our lives. And I really loved that. I thought that was a really wonderful theme to sort of be discussing, because one of the narrators in this book is a book, and the other narrator of this book is the boy. So I thought that was fantastic. I really loved this, and it's definitely worth a read. There's a lot of triggering things in here, but look them up. Adored. I have 2 books here that I'm not going to go too much in depth, because when we come back from hiatus, there will be 2 episodes, one for each of these books, where we talk about this on TBR Lowdown. So make sure that you are following, subscribing. I'll put it up somewhere up here. TBR Lowdown, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a review, that would be fantastic. We are taking July off, and we will be back in August with more videos, yeah, and more podcast episodes. So that will be season 2, and yeah, I can't believe we've been doing this for like a year already, and we have not missed a Monday, which is crazy to me. Anyway, so the first one is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas, and I just thought this book was so good. I mean, clearly it's flagged to the heavens. We talked about this book for, I think, over an hour when we broke this down, but this book is deceptively good. So you sort of read this and you're thinking you're going to have this narrative of this woman and like she wants to have an affair and she's sort of middle-aged and like she's got a cheating husband and it's going to be like this emotional contemporary like drama, which it is, but it's also just a really in-depth exploration of what it means to like be a woman and to age as a woman, and like what value do you have? How do you have a marriage in modern society? What does it mean to be in a marriage? What happens when the outside world intrudes on your marriage? And like you could be running your marriage in a way that suits both you and your partner. However, the outside world might think that that is not okay or not ideal or not following any sort of, I don't know, norms, social norms, and then judge you for it. And then does that call into question a lot of your things? Did you think that you were being incredibly progressive and, you know, you're this woman in an open marriage, but you're still doing all the women things? So it's this really great, our main character has these great, like, deep monologues about being an aging woman and like what does it mean to be attractive and do you still have value and is your only value attached to your husband, all these things, and it was phenomenal. And we're going to go into depth in an upcoming TBR Lowdown episode in August about this, so stay tuned again and you can find out more. But absolutely love this. It's super short, very like addictively readable. Like you can't, it's compulsively readable. That's the word I want. So it's a good summer book, I think, because you will pick it up like at the pool and not stop reading it because it's fantastic. And she's a little bit screwed up, this main character, but like she says things to you in a way that gets you to start like almost agreeing with her, and you're like, I feel bad that I almost agree with her on this point. But it's really good. I highly recommend it. And then this is the other episode that is upcoming on TBR Lowdown, and that is Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell. I also talked about this on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am Nerdy Nurse Reads over on Instagram as well. Almost everywhere I'm Nerdy Nurse Reads. And I did do a post when I finished this. This book is hilarious. It has fantastic disability rep and would be a perfect book for July. If you are like, you know what, I don't read anything about disability. It's Disability Pride Month in July, so not that I think you should only read these things in the month where that's their Pride Month. By no means, ma'am, you should be reading diversely all the time. But if you're just like, I need something, pick this up. It's hilarious. It's raunchy, though. So like if you don't like raunchy, and I think raunchy is the best word, maybe don't, because the sex is kind of graphic, but like not in like a little sexy graphic way. It's like, it's just graphic. Like it's just raunchy. It's very straightforward and raunchy. The humor is very dry and it is hilarious and also really sad. So again, you have like a messy relationship. You have a main character who has a disability. He has cerebral palsy and he is a TV writer, and you through him struggling with his relationship and struggling with their addictions to alcohol and struggling to just function in an ableist society, you get all these discussions of what does it mean to be disabled? What does it mean to be gay? What does it mean to be an alcoholic? Do you have to settle just because you are one way? Because our main character has this, as he states in the beginning, this absolutely beautiful, perfect boyfriend who is wonderful and sweet and kind and takes care of him. And on paper, he's the on paper perfect boyfriend. But when you dig a little deeper, you realize that one, our main character needs more, and two, there's a lot of flaws in that relationship. They're both very addicted to alcohol to the point where anytime anything bad happens, they are deflecting into getting drunk, and it's not a healthy relationship. And our main character has never, because of his disability and because of being gay and all of that combining into just a lot of need for like self-love and exploration, and sort of fear of maybe putting himself out there. I'm trying to think of the best ways to say this. It's kept him from exploring certain areas in his life when he was younger. So where as somebody else may have gone out in their teens and like kissed a lot of boys or had all these relationships or done all these things, it was a little harder for him to do so. And a lot of it was because of social stigma. So now he's older and he's sort of at this crisis in his relationship. He starts to do all of this exploration, but within the confines of a relationship, and then that undermines the relationship. So he eventually has like a sort of coming to understand himself moment. He's got a great arc, a learning arc from the beginning to end, but it's really, there's a lot of humor dark humor getting you through how sad some of these moments are and how poor some of his decisions are as he's now exploring who he is and really just embracing the fact that he deserves the right to explore who the hell he is. And his dad is fucking fantastic. I just want you to know that the dad in this book is the best dad. Like the best dad. So good. Such a good dad. And I love that you have this really healthy parent figure in this book too. Definitely read it. If you don't like raunch though, if you're a little sensitive to the raunchy, maybe don't, but I thought it was top notch, had me giggling so much. 2 more to go on this, and then I have 2 honorable mentions. So first up for notable reads, second to last, penultimate, is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. I read this because of girlhood, as I've mentioned in, I think a few times, why I wanted to read this, because it gets mentioned a lot in girlhood. And because Lily Bart is this character who sort of goes against social norms in like high society in New York in, the Gilded Age, which that is a society that is filled with rules, regulations, manners, etiquette, expectations, all these things, especially for women. And I found this really interesting to read because, one, it really reminded me of Tess of the Dubervilles. And Tess of the Dubervilles is by Thomas Hardy is like this moral, very symbolism heavy, religious doctrine heavy, like story about a poor woman who is just brutalized by the system in which she lives. A woman has to remain pure, which continues through this. There's this sense of purity, but there's also like a lack of education and understanding. It's like you're trying to do everything with your hands tied behind your back, right? Like you can never quite, once you start to kind of get kicked down by life, it's really hard to come back up, especially as a woman. And not a lot changed from Victorian Tess of the Dubervilles to Edwardian House of Mirth. So Lily Bart is a woman who comes from money, but her family has lost her money because, frankly, her parents are terrible and were very bad at managing it. But they did what they were supposed to do. They just kind of like spent their money and did what they were supposed to do to keep up appearances. And now Lily is adrift and living with an aunt, and she basically, her only salvation is to get married. And really the only person she wants to marry is somebody that she can't marry because financially it makes 0 sense. And everybody, the one person you open the book with her trying to marry this really boring, very like staunchly religious man, and it's not the person for Lily. Lily is a lot more of a free spirit. She has a lot of personality and self-determination and all kinds of things that are just not the right for that guy. But she understands her duty, and so this whole book is about her attempting to do her duty and just being failed at every turn. She needs to survive, and yes, she makes stupid decisions because she's young and ill-informed, but she's also really trying hard to survive in a world where women don't get the ability to take care of themselves. They have like very few options other than to marry to the best of their ability, have more babies, and hopefully continue to social climb, because that's just the structure. They don't have jobs, they don't have education, they don't have anything. And poor Lily is just, she's failed so many times by society. And she does, like, I'm not going to excuse, she does make a lot of stupid decisions too. But a lot of the stupid decisions are based on the fact that, like, she doesn't know any better. Because, like, why would you know any better? Like, she gets put in these precarious situations because she thinks one thing is happening. But what's really happening is that the man has manipulated her. And now she's in jeopardy. So you just, like, her whole reputation ends up being in jeopardy. And it is just this saga of her starting high and just plummeting despite all of her best attempts to maintain her independence, dignity, reputation, well-being, everything. Like, this is a woman who will survive at all costs, and I admire her. But society doesn't want her to just survive at all costs. Society wants her to follow the strict societal norms. And even if she's fun at parties, no, like, that's not enough to make up for whatever she may have done that is that doesn't follow social norms. So it's a really interesting book. And I highly recommend that if you're looking for a classic to read, this would be a really great one. The last one I have is Half Blown Rose by Lisa Cross Smith. I am starting to fall in love with Lisa Cross Smith. I loved This Close to Okay. This book was phenomenal. And I mean, this is a contemporary sort of romance, but I hesitate to call it a romance. So you have this woman, her husband's this writer, a very famous writer, and he gets really famous for this one book. And the problem is that this one book is an autofiction that reveals a lot of secrets that she didn't know about her husband, including the fact that he had gotten a woman pregnant and left them back in Ireland before he moved to the States as a teenager and before they met. But it calls into question a lot of things about her marriage, about her husband, about why he chose to not tell her directly and why he did it in this book. And it sends her to this like year in Paris. Her parents are these famous artists and they have a beautiful place in Paris that she can stay. And she like teaches these these drawing and like writing classes. And she meets this young man, Lou, and she and her husband are estranged while they try to figure out all this stuff. And basically her son is getting married in like a year's time. So there's this date at which all the worlds are going to collide, and she's just struggling to figure out what she wants. Does she want to stay with her husband? Does she want to move on? Does she want to have a young lover? What the heck does she want to do with her life? Does she want to be by herself? And you watch her struggle with all kinds of emotions. It is so phenomenally written. It is filled with music and like writing prompts, weirdly. Food, I mean, it makes me want to go to Paris and get a young lover. It's phenomenal. And it's not going to be for everybody. If you really hate a cheating trope, if you really hate like a he left me on red for days kind of story, don't. But that's not really what it's about. It's about finding yourself again after being connected with somebody else for years and realizing that that wasn't even a person you knew. Like, there was more to that person than you knew. So it's a really interesting exploration of like marriage and life and being a mother and all this other stuff. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. The dogs are going crazy downstairs and I apologize, but we're gonna soldier on. So I have two notable reads that I just wanted to pop in here. And one is Steve Martin's An Object of Beauty, which I'm popping in here because I did not know that Steve Martin wrote books. Steve Martin wrote books. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he writes other things, so like, why wouldn't he write books? But I didn't think that he would write a book like this. So this is a book that is set in New York. Ding, you know I love it. And two, it very much dives into the New York art world, especially in this like one specific time period. And you watch sort of the art world like sink and come up and then sink again around 9/11. It is also kind of a little mystery because our main character, she does something to jumpstart her career when it's kind of floundering, and you don't really find out what the hell she did until the end, and you kind of just keep reading because you want to find out what the hell happened because you get these tiny little nuggets. And throughout, while you're doing that, you're getting all of these discussions of different artworks. And what I think is really beautiful about this is that he includes full color pictures of the paintings, many of the paintings that they're discussing in the book. So it's not just talking about, you know, something and you have to try to imagine it. You can really look and understand what they're talking about when they talk about the art. So if you're somebody that really likes art or wants to get into art, I think this is a really interesting way to spark some more curiosity, to learn some more about art and not have it be like a stodgy or boring textbook, or like to have it wrapped up in a fun story. So I thought this was really interesting, and I would recommend that to people who like contemporary sort of artsy books. And the other one, of course, I'm going to recommend Godblind by Anne Stevens. I have to put this on my honorable mentions because the places they nail testicles is just... I love a good grimdark, and I love that there's lady grimdark. So like, there's a lot of male grimdark out there, and it's a little, I don't know, rapey. And it's like dark, but like a different kind of dark. And I kind of wanted to see what the ladies of Grimdark had to offer, and Anna Stevens is offering. I have the second book that just arrived, so I have to get into that. My only bummer is that there is no audiobook for the second book because I think Scribd is publishing the audiobooks for these. I learned listening to this one that Scribd has an audiobook arm, like they're making their own audiobooks, which I think is phenomenal that they're branching out into that. I think that makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. So I don't think they have crafted the second one yet. So I'm gonna have to read that one physically, which is, it takes me a while to read things physically because I just don't sit down. If I'm sitting down and doing something, it's this. I don't sit down and do nothing. So, but if you're looking for, that's not the point of this. The point is if you're looking for a good grimdark that is like violent and interesting and deals with like all kinds of different topics. I mean, there's like queer rep in here, which I think is lovely because you don't see that all the time in fantasy. I think that it's just the right amount of violent, in my humble opinion. If you don't like violence, maybe don't read it at all. But like grimdark's not gonna be your thing if you don't like violence. Like, just don't read grimdark. But anyway, love this. I can't wait to continue on the series, and I hope it is still really good. I still would like to know why I cannot find book 2 for less than $40 in hardback, but it's fine. That, my friends, is my notable reads June wrap up, yada, yada, yada. If you want to see everything that I read all the time, you can follow me on Storygraph. Am I just going to keep promoting this? Yes. Is it sponsored? No. Am I ever sponsored? No, because I have like 4 followers. But I do love Storygraph, and if you ever want to do a buddy read, or if I'm reading something and you guys want to read along with me, let me know and we can set up a buddy read because I love their buddy read feature. I really do. I think it's awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys liked the most from last month. Otherwise, yeah, like and subscribe, comment down below, you know, even if it's just a simple hello. The algorithm loves a good comment. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in my next video, whatever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. Ciao.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry. I don't think I ever wanna go come closer next to me. Trying to find another way to say this, but I think we were meant